Great. So, Cheryl, I wondered if you could just let us know a little bit about who you are and what your role is within the diocese.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Trice. I am the team lead advisor for children and young people and their ministry and mission with children and young people. So anything that happens across the diocese that involves our children, young people and family and their mission and their ministry with them, that's basically my brief, and that's what I do for the diocese.
Brilliant. That's it's a really whizzy title that you've got there. What is it you really love about your job?
I've always been passionate about children and young people. I was a youth worker before I started this job with Kent County Council. But also I had a faith. I've had a faith from a very early age. I was very fortunate to be brought up in a Christian family, but decided at the age of 11 that I needed to make that personal choice for myself. So although I had a secular sort of youth work job, obviously my Christian faith impacted that as much as possible. So when this job came available, where I was able to bring my Christian faith into youth work practice and to work with our children and young people and families, that was the thing that really excited me about the role. I think for me, the actual thing that makes my heart sing and where the Holy Spirit becomes alive is where you just see a child or a young person that just then grabs that moment that they just have had that opportunity to meet with God, and for that to be a real personal moment. And I've been very privileged over the years of working with children and young people that you're just there at that moment where there's that light bulb moment and you can see the interaction between them and God. And I think that's what I really love about the job. My job is to be able to go along with parishes and work alongside people that are also passionate about children and young people and families and the ministry, and just to be able to say, let's think about this, let's have a go at this, and just for them to then be in that moment as well.
And I know for myself and the volunteers we have here, we love seeing when children have that spark of this is what it's all about and who Jesus is. Brilliant. Now, you started your role with one idea of what it would be, and then I think for everyone across the country, suddenly life has changed, jobs have changed. How has your role changed in recent weeks, given the outbreak?
Well, I'm still obviously doing interviews. I'm still attending PCC meetings virtually. That's quite different. I'm still being able to train and to have the conversations with people. But of course, we're just using technology, and it's happening in a different way. That's been quite hard to get used to. I'm quite a people person, so rather than standing up and being within a group of people and get that interaction, that feedback, when you're just you've got a screen of people, it's slightly different, and you just have to adapt. Obviously, your training or your teaching and that sort of thing. So it's been quite difficult, but also it's made me think, actually, what are the key messages? What is it that you want people to go away with? So that's been quite interesting. Right at the very beginning of when lockdown started, we felt that we really needed to update our guidance very quickly. So we've worked alongside with the safeguarding team and the communication team within the diocese of putting some guidance up on the website of how actually to maintain relationships and that connection as much as you can with your children and young people. So very early on, it was about writing the guidance and getting the information out there and just making sure that people were comfortable with what they were doing, but they were still being able to undertake it, following the government guidance, but also our safeguarding guidance as well. I've not written material for a number of years, I have to say, so be able to have the space to write material has been really interesting. So on the Diocesan website, every week there's been an interactive and intergenerational service sheet for families to gather into worship and gather into a space to be with each other and to be with God and to learn more about each other and to learn more about how their faith impacts them as a family. And that's purposely been written to stimulate those conversations through activities, through worship, through prayer. So I've quite enjoyed writing those, actually. So they're sort of there. We have had some churches that have still wanted to go through with their recruitment processes as well. Again, it's been different. And we've been interviewing and getting to know people virtually rather than in a room. So in some senses, my job hasn't changed a great deal, but there's been different elements that have come into it.
Brilliant. And those materials you mentioned, we've been putting them in our show notes every week, and people have been downloading them. So thank you. It's good to have a face for who's been putting that together. And virtual PCC meetings, well, I could tell you more about that, but that's for another time. Just as your job has been different, church has been different as well. I guess, given that you're seeing lots of different churches, have you got any thoughts about things that that are good practice, things that people have been doing that you could share with us?
I think it's really important actually to do a bit of an overview of actually what your context is. So what is it that your community and your parish is where's the need? So looking at actually where is the need, and actually where can we as a church community meet that need. And it's really important to think about the resources that you have as a church as well. We know that our churches differ across the diocese, and some churches are really heavily resourced in IT, technology, those sorts of things, and people that are able to do that. And they've got the skills. And at the other end of the spectrum, we've got very rural parishes as well, where it's an elderly congregation that don't necessarily have the IT equipment for them to be able to access services. So it's looking really at the context of where you are as a parish, and we've seen a real range of different ministries going on. One of the things that I was most inspired about was a story that I heard this week. I was speaking to a lady who actually is a foster carer, and she had to take on a young lady whose mother had died of COVID-19 a few weeks ago, and there was no other family support. So this young lady has had to go into foster care. And she put it out around her community. Now, not everybody is obviously a Christian within that community, that she was having this young lady who hadn't been able to go back into their home or into her home. So what the community did was they rallied together and provided clothes and resources and things that young lady might need to have while living with them. And she said she was just so overwhelmed by the love and the generosity of the community through that. So I think, it's those sort of personal touches that seem to work and, are very much needed from churches and from parishes. Of course, we've had a lot of streaming of services that have gone on. We've had things from puppet shows to, we know that, some people have still continued with different specific activities for children and families. We know of a Facebook doodle group that happens. We've got a talented artist in the diocese, and she just put it on there on a Facebook page that she was happy to meet with people at a certain time every day and to sit and have a conversation with people that people could access into that group. There's been lots of youth ministry that's still continued through Bible studies and that sort of thing. But what we have found is that not all young people have accessed that. So even if they've been a member of that church for many years and grew up in that church, they've not necessarily wanted to access the Bible study or the youth ministry or the youth group that's gone on. And partly that's because they're so streamed out by the end of the day, if they've had to do live lessons. Or they've had to do other things online. When it comes to actually their downtime, they've not necessarily wanted to join in with what the church is putting on. And that's been something that's gone across the nation. Youthscape produced a report a couple of weeks ago, which backed up the evidence that we're actually seeing locally as well. But on the other side of that, there are some churches that have still been doing their youth groups via Zoom, just like you would do your PCC via Zoom, and they've had new young people come along because those young people have felt that it's safe to access it that way rather than to work in the church building. So I think it will be very interesting to watch what happens and how we facilitate our children, young people and family ministry in the future, that I think may be needed to be a bit of a blended of what we did have to what we've got now, so that it provides the access to engage in a way that they feel that they can.
And I mean, we're thinking very much those things through about church as well, what it will look like in the future. And yeah, much of what you've said are things we've been doing here. So thanks for that encouragement. Now, we are thinking about the future. And actually, our paths crossed a few months ago. We were about to charge ahead with looking for a new children and families worker. We've pressed pause for a little bit, given the lockdown. Are there sort of things you could mention for us that we should be praying through and thinking through as we resume that hopefully in the autumn?
Again, it comes back to the context and where the need, I think, is within your community and within your parish. And something I learnt a couple of years ago, which has really been quite inspirational. And someone said to me, he said, always go where you see Jesus at work. And I think that is so true, is to do that sort of evaluation and think, actually, where is it that Jesus would want to be working? Where do we see Jesus already happening within our communities, and to build and to develop that, and to extend that further. I think when we look at our children and young people's ministry, and particularly family ministry as well, I think it's really important that it's an integrated thing. So that it's not necessarily children here, young people here, family there, that it's much more of an integrated and participative ministry. And the way that we enable that to happen is to have rhythms and patterns within our life. That it's not just an add-on, that Jesus just isn't an add-on that we see on a Sunday or that we'd suddenly dip in and out of at times, but it becomes a pattern and a way of life that's just integrated fully. I joined in a webinar by Andrew Root last week, who is an American author who is very well-known theologian. And what he doesn't know about youth ministry isn't worth knowing, to be quite honest. But he was talking about is that they think that the reason why, and obviously this is an American context, that they've seen a drop-off within their youth ministry is that families try to find things for children to do. So they find the thing that their children is good at, and then it becomes part of their identity and it becomes part of their self-worth. And as I was listening to this, I was thinking, actually, but the thing should be a rhythm and a pattern. And we would want Jesus to be the thing and our faith to be the thing. But that needs to be interwoven. So it shouldn't be just the thing. It's a rhythm and a pattern of life. And I think that's the same for the church as well, is that we should be really encouraging our children and young people to be curators of worship and not just the add-on or just the separate thing, that it's a fully integrated way of life. Your family life, your church life should be a flow and a pattern, and it's fully integrated and not just the thing that's added on at various times.
That's fascinating, and that much is something I've been involved in, which is a Church of England initiative called Growing Faith, and hopefully I'll be sharing more about that in the coming months as well. So thanks, Cheryl. Cheryl, thank you so much for your time. We'll be praying for you and the work across the diocese over coming weeks and months. Thank you.
Pleasure. Goodbye.